Well, good morning, everybody. My name is PJ. I'm the campus pastor here at Renewal Church in the Highlands, and it is great joy to be with you today as we continue this series that we've been in called That Love. And in this series, we are looking at the love that started and was made manifest in these hands of Jesus that then comes to us and then flows forth in our hands to the world. And so far in this series, we've been looking at 1 John. We've been walking through this letter, and John has some strong words for Christians on how they're supposed to live and love and what they're supposed to know and believe about God. And today we're celebrating this beautiful love that is willing to call us children. But with that, there's a little bit of a catch. So that's what we're going to be looking at today, is this beautiful love that invites us into the family of God, but also then can provide a challenge. So that's what we're examining today. So we're going to be looking at 1 John chapter 2, and this is a beautiful section that we're looking at where John is going to start off talking about what it means to be children. So verse 28 here, we have John's words. And now, little children, abide in him, so that when he appears, we may have confidence and not shrink from him in shame at his coming. So John is already calling them little children. I just want to start off, and I want to reflect on a little bit. What comes with being a part of a family, right? What is the blessing of a family? You think about the things it comes with. It comes with company. I was one of 5 kids. I always had people to play with, right? Family gets to spend time with one another. Being part of a family comes with love. It comes with people who support you, encourage you, guide you. Being part of a family comes with traditions, these beautiful things that connect us to those of the past. I love, too, the values that come with being part of a family. Maybe you're a part of a family that you'd ask, like, Mom, Dad, why do we do this? And you get the answer, well, in this family, this is how we live, right? And I don't know how other families do it, but in this family, we do this. In this family, we listen. This family, we share. This family, we give. This family, we say thank you, I'm sorry, all of that. So being a part of a family comes with all of these beautiful gifts. And so right off the bat, John is calling them little children and calling them to abide in Jesus so that when he comes back, he appears once again, they may have confidence and not shrink. There's no shame, there's no hiding from Jesus when he comes back because we are called children. He continues on here, he says, if you know that he is righteous, that is Jesus, you may be sure that everyone who practices righteousness has been born of him. So if we know that Jesus is pure and holy and good, then everyone who is born of him is going to live out that same righteousness. Right? We see that, who practices righteousness. And then he says this beautiful passage, see what kind of love the Father has given to us, that we should be called children of God, and so we are. And I love that Paul just stops and says, just see what kind of love this is. Because I want you to zoom back and think about human beings as a race, as a species. We are made of dirt. Like God made all of these creatures, and he made the beautiful stars and the creatures of the sea and of the sky and all of this, and then he makes humanity out of the dirt of the ground, and then he loves us so much that he's willing to look at this pile of dirt that he's formed and say, you know what, you are now my child. You're not just a creature to me, you're not just some other thing, you're not just a pet, you are my child. And so Paul just wants us to stop and just to soak this in. See what kind of love the Father has given to us. What kind of love is this? That we should be called children of God. And then there's not a question, are we? No. If he calls us that, then so we are. Right? We just sang that beautiful song, No Longer Slaves. We're no longer slaves to sin and all these other things, but now we are confident and sure that we are God's own children. That is a promise. The next verse, he then talks about this reality. He says, Beloved, we are God's children now, and what we will be has not yet appeared. But we know that when he appears, we shall be like him, because we shall see him as he is. So again, John cares deeply for this Christian community. He calls them beloved, these people I love. And he says, see, we're God's children now. Being born again of Jesus, you are now God's child. And yet, what we will fully become, we can't even see it yet. There's something even greater. Because we know that when Jesus appears, then we shall be like him. And this is the beautiful now and not yet reality of the Christian life, is that we are already in this fallen world with all of our messes. We are children of God, baptized into Jesus. And yet we know that when Jesus returns, then we will appear like him. When he appears to us, we are transformed, we are resurrected and given a new righteousness, a new glory. because then we shall see him as he is. And you think of how beautiful it is that we see Jesus, we hear his word, and yet we will get to see him with our own eyes one day and see him in all of his fullness and his majesty, because we will be like him. Not the Son of God, but glorious and righteous in God's sight, made perfect. And so John finishes this section by saying, and everyone who thus hopes in him purifies himself as he is pure. So everyone whose hope is in Jesus then will be purified and purify themselves just as Jesus is pure. That's John's beautiful little section on being children of God. How great is this, beloved? The love the Father has for us, that we might be called children of God, and so we are. And we will appear like he is, and we will see him as he is, face to face one day. It's going to be wonderful, and we're going to purify ourselves in the meantime as he is pure. So this is one of the beautiful things, right? What comes with a family? This love, this beautiful acceptance, this guidance, these traditions, this community. But I skipped one part of this passage. I skipped half of a verse, because this half of the verse is the challenge to being part of God's family. This was in verse 1. This is the second half. Right after that beautiful sentence, beloved, see how great the Father's love is for us, that we should be called children of God, and so we are. And then John says this: the reason why the world does not know us is that it did not know him. So isn't it wonderful? We're children of God. This is great. By the way, the world's not going to know you. Now, what John is alluding to here is that the world is going to reject God's family. Right? This association, and it's grounded in the fact that the world first did not know Jesus. So Jesus came, right? What did he preach? Life, restoration, repentance. How did the world react? They crucified him. And so John is saying, if you're going to be part of this family, know that what they did to him, you can expect the same. Now, you might not die the same death, you might not experience the same reaction, but at the same time, there's this connection here that if it did not know him, the world is not going to know you. Think about this for a second. How many times you have a reputation or people treat you a certain way because of who you're associated with, right? If you went through school and you were a younger sibling and you had a teacher that your older siblings had, right? They already had an idea of who you were, good or bad, depending on who your sibling was, right? Ooh, this is that troublesome family. My parents are teachers. Kids are all different, but they have these trends. You think about the times that, think of celebrity kids for a second. I'd venture to guess nobody here has to hide their kids from paparazzi, right? What's different about those kids? Who they're associated with. And so the treatment for one goes to the other. This is why you look at throughout history, and whenever you wanted to attack, right, like a king or a queen or somebody, you could attack their family. This near and dear personal. What did that person do to deserve it? Nothing. They're just associated. They're connected. They're part of the family. And so John draws this connection that if you're going to be part of Jesus' family, then as the world rejected Jesus, we can anticipate that at times the world is going to reject his people too. It comes with being part of it. Jesus actually says this himself in Matthew chapter 10. He says, a disciple is not above his teacher, nor a servant above his master. It is enough for the disciple to be like his teacher, and the servant like his master. If they have called the master of the house Beelzebul, how much more will they malign those of his household? Beelzebul is just a funny word. At the time, it means prince of demons. So Jesus is saying, if I'm, right, the teacher, I'm the master, I'm the head of this household, and you're the disciple, the servant, part of this household. If they're calling me, the Son of Man, God incarnate, pure and holy, prince of demons, then you can expect much of the same. Because you're not above Jesus, so you shouldn't expect better treatment than him. So this gets at the real reaction. So what we're looking at today is we are children of God, baptized into this family, and yet we can anticipate that this is a love that we are going to live out that will at times be rejected by the world. And it seems counterintuitive because we like to think that wherever love is, there just will always be met with open doors. But the love of Christ is one that is willing to point people to a one true Savior. It is willing to make things uncomfortable at times. It is willing to lay down its life. It's willing to say, this is the way that God has called us to walk, and this is the way that his love has been brought to us. And at times, the world is going to hear that message and say, no, thank you. And as ambassadors and as voices for that message, there's times where we too will be rejected for this. Just imagine a situation where you have a neighbor, and as a Christian, you get to know them as a person, right? And you invest, and you shovel their driveway, and you just do whatever you can to embody the servant heart of Jesus for them, and you give to them, and you serve, and you love, and you open up your heart to them, and you share what's happened to you. And then at some point during the relationship, they realize that you're a Christian, and they realize what you believe, right? Wait, you believe that there's only one way to God, through Jesus, not the others? Wait, you believe that God calls us to live that way? And all of a sudden that relationship that you have opened your heart up to and that you have poured out love can be cut off and rejected and pushed away. And that is painful. Anyone who has loved knows that it is hurtful and it stings when you open yourself up to somebody and then only to be rejected and turned away. And so there are going to be times where, as Christians, the world is going to reject us for being associated with Jesus, right? Christians have a reputation, some of it deserved, to be clear, and it's not always positive. And there's times where people are going to look at you as backwards or ignorant or bigoted or wrong or just mean because of Jesus. And yet that's what they said of Jesus himself. And so there's times where we're going to love and it is going to be rejected and turned back. Now, I do want to put a caveat. This is sometimes Christians are persecuted because they're jerks. Just because people don't like you does not mean that it's because you're holy and good. Sometimes we bring it upon ourselves, and sometimes Christians have not always spoken the truth in love. Right? So this is not green light to say, all right, somebody was mad at me, so I must be doing something right all the time. But it is to say that even with the most godlike, pure-intentioned love towards the world, there is times where it is going to be rejected. And so what I want to reflect on today is 3 ways that I believe when we face rejection, we are tempted to stop loving. Because it is really easy when we feel that we are loving somebody and it is rejected to stop the same sacrificial love. And I think those 3 are that we can retreat, we can close off, and we can break apart. These are just my observations, but I think that these get at the heart of what it means to love and to be rejected. So first, I just want to talk about what it means to retreat. It takes a lot to put yourself out there, right? And so when you go into this world and you have these big eyes and you're like, I want to go change the world, I want to go love people, and then the world hits you with a smack of reality. I used to listen to this song during this kind of emo phase at one point called "I Wanted to Change the World, but the World Changed Me." I just sit there oh man, right? Yeah, go look it up. It's a sad song, but anyways. But the idea is that sometimes we can go out there and we can love, and then when you face rejection, when you face hurt, when you bear it all for them, and you're like, yes, I want to help you, I want to serve you, and it's shut back in your face, the easy thing is to say, you know what, I'm not going out there to love anyone again. Here's my circle, here's who I know aren't going to hurt me, and I'm just going to stay in there. I'm going to retreat to my safety, and I'm going to let them deal with it, right? And again, this is self-protection, right? I don't want to be hurt, and so I'm not even going to put myself out there. Now, the challenge with this is that this goes against the Great Commission. Go and make disciples. But the hard thing is, Jesus in that point, he just says, go make disciples. You're like, yes. And then you go try and reach people with Jesus, and it gets shut in your face, and you're like, okay, I tried, gave it my best. So there's a temptation to retreat. I'm not going to go out there. Now, the second one that I've observed in myself and others is that if we do go out there, it's really easy to close off. So if your heart has been hurt, it's easy to put armor up around it. So sure, I'm going to go talk to people, but I'm going to be short, friendly, small talk, nothing beyond surface level, because then I can't be hurt. If I don't share my hopes, if I don't put myself out there, then I can't be damaged. And so I'm just going to go out there with my armor on and protect myself, and that's it. All right? Not to make a bunch of music references, but I think of Believe by Cher, right? Do you believe in life after love? Right? Great song. But that whole song is about a woman who has been hurt in love and is wondering, I don't know if I'm strong enough to love again. And so it'd just be easier to close off and not to open myself up for that. And again, that's romance. We're not talking about romance right now. But the same idea applies. Right? If I'm going to go out there and if I get hurt, it's easier just to go out with my armor and protect myself and guard myself so nobody can hurt this anymore. And then finally, this is communal. There's a temptation to break apart. Right? So when you're in a community and your association with that community causes you pain, it's really easy to want to break away from it. I don't want to be associated with them anymore, right? If being a Christian means that I'm going to face rejection sometimes, then maybe I don't want to be part of the Christian community, or I just kind of want to do my own thing. If anyone's read A Farewell to Arms by Ernest Hemingway, very good book, but it's a story of this officer in the ambulance corps of the Italian army in World War I. And what happens at one point is they're on their retreat and they're facing attack, and all of a sudden they start turning on one another. They're filled with skepticism and schism. They start suspecting one another as being traitors, and what happens is this unified army that had gone out, when faced with pushback, then starts to splinter and split. And sometimes as a Christian community, it can be really easy to do that too, because the church is big and it is diverse, and sometimes when we face pushback, it's easy to break off. I don't want to be part of this anymore. I just want to go my own way, again, protect myself, because if that's what's happening to the church, then I don't want to be part of the church. And so I think these are just 3 ways that we try and protect ourselves when facing rejection, right? We can retreat. I'm not going to go out there at all. We can close off. I'm going to go out there, but I'm going to have my armor on. Or we break apart. We split off from one another. And these are all dangerous because they neglect the very essence of what Jesus has called us to be. Because families come with good and bad, as many of us know. But in this case, the good of Jesus and his family is infinitely greater than the challenges of rejection and the ways that we try and protect ourselves. So if you look back at the first verse we read, John had this beautiful little sentence. He says, "And now, little children, abide in him, so that when he appears, we may have confidence and not shrink from him in shame at his coming." John doesn't want God's children to shrink from Jesus at his coming, but rather to have confidence, abiding in Jesus. Because here's the deal, when Jesus came into the world, he came to love it. And again, we talked about how'd that go. Jesus was tempted to retreat, at least we would assume, right? If going forward and loving the world as he came to do led to a cross, he could have retreated, he could have said, you know what, I'm out, I tried, they don't want it. And yet he pressed on to the point of the cross. You think of the way that Jesus could have closed off, the way that he could have kept everything superficial. You know, I'm the Son of God. If you don't want to listen to me, that's fine. And yet he bore his heart. He shared the fullness of the wisdom of God with the world. He opened up his heart, and they tried to drive a spear right through it. And when all of his disciples were breaking apart, all of his disciples were splintering and fracturing and leaving him, he prayed to the Father that they might be one, that God would hold his church and his people together. And Jesus ultimately was the one who was willing to love the world so much that even in the face of rejection and persecution and death on the cross, he demonstrated a love that overcame death itself and rose victoriously. That love, so that when we come to him, we will not be rejected. The world is going to look at us sometimes as backwards, bigoted, closed-minded. And when God sees us, he sees us associated with Jesus, his son. He says, "You are righteous. You are holy. You are blameless. You are my child." He will never reject. And so we abide in the one who loved, the one who gave everything, so that we might have life and be called children of God. So we might have confidence and not shrink from him and shame at his coming, but when he returns, greet him with open arms, like a family member who hasn't seen the other in a while, sprinting and hugging, rejoicing. I've missed you. And so what I want to just suggest for us is that this love that is grounded, that abides in Jesus, that holds fast to this one who is crucified for us, gives us a perseverant love, a love that is willing to love the world, even in the face of rejection. And so instead of retreating, this is a perseverant love that presses on. Now, I just want to be clear. There are times when, there's only so much we can take. This does not mean go out to every single person, bare your soul every single time. But when we are tempted to retreat and close ourselves off from the world and say, you know what, I don't want anymore, it is too painful, we look to the love of Jesus that continues to come to us no matter how many times we let him down, no matter how many times we sin, that continues to come after us in everything. And we take that and we use it to press on into the world, to continue to go to people who are lost and in need and to serve and love no matter what might come. And when we're tempted to close off, we're called to open up. Again, not to everybody all the time, but if we want to just live in this closed little shell, then we are also closing off the light of Christ shining through us. And so rather, we are called to love people and to open up as well, because we don't need to build up our own armor. Christ is our armor. He has given it to us. And so it might be painful at times, and yet we still open up our heart to love the world and care for it, so people might come to know the same love that calls them to be children as well. And then finally, this is a perseverant love that holds together. Again, there's a temptation to split, but one of the hardest things when you're facing attacks or persecution or rejection is to do it all on your own. And so it's at times when we feel the most rejected by the world, the most outsiderish, that we are called as a church to hold fast together, arm in arm. You know the game Red Rover, right? You link arms, and you can't break through. And so this is a perseverant love, ultimately in Jesus, that has come to us. A love that pressed forward, a love that opened his heart up to the world that hated him, a love that held his church together even when they scattered. And so now we as his family press on, open up, and hold together. Because in this family, that's what we do. That's what we do. In Jesus' name, amen.